Hey there, just a heads up, this episode of the Judo Science Podcast was created with help from AI. Some of the voices you'll hear are synthetic, but the ideas come from real research and real judo.
Okay, so you're here because you want to get a deeper understanding of Judo's Ashi Harai, the advanced foot sweep. And we're going to give you just that, way more than just how to do the basic movement. We're diving into what actually makes it work, like for real.
Right on. You want to go beyond the surface level. We've got some really cool stuff to help us out with that. We've got a scientific paper that breaks down the body positioning, plus an article about how the throw works, and even some research looking at the muscles that you use when you do it.
Yeah. So we are going to fully dissect the Ashi Harai for you. We're going to look at everything from where your body should be at the very beginning of the throw, the specific movements you have to make, and even the muscles that are doing the most work to make it happen. Think of it as a crash course, but like a fun one.
Definitely a fun one.
Okay, let's get right into it. First things first, what actually is Ashi Harai?
So the Ashi Harai article says that it's like a core judo technique. It's one of the Ashi Waza, which are the foot and leg techniques. The main goal is to get your opponent off balance uke, and then you gain control.
So it sounds pretty simple, but then you try to actually do it. What are the steps that we need to be thinking about?
Well, the article lays out 4 main stages. So first step, you've got kazushi. It's basically off-balancing your opponent. You can do that in a few ways, like how you're gripping them, how you move around them, even just breaking their posture.
Right. You're not going to sweep something that's like a solid brick wall. You got to make them wobbly first.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next?
Then comes the entry. You take a step back, and that pulls you forward, which makes them even more off balance.
Kind of like setting a trap for them. All right, they're wobbly, moving forward. Time for the actual swoop.
Exactly. So now it's the sweeping action. Timing and coordination here are super important. You use the bottom of your foot, like the fleshy part, to sweep across the outside of uke's front leg or ankle. You go sideways with it.
It's not a hard kick, more like you're precisely taking their support away.
Yeah. And then the last stage is completion. So as their leg is swept away, you use your upper body and the grips that you have to guide them onto the mat. That finishes the throw.
Okay, so the article mentions there are some variations you see people doing in competition. What's up with that?
Yeah, it points out 2 that are pretty popular. One is sweeping as your opponent steps back, and the other one is sweeping as they're moving sideways, which kind of shows how flexible the technique is. You can adapt it to what your opponent is doing.
It's not like a rigid thing. You can flow with it.
Yeah.
The article also talks about how important timing and coordination are, but also staying balanced yourself and keeping good posture. Why is that so important for the person doing the sweep, Tori?
Your own posture and balance, yeah, it's crucial for a few reasons. First, it makes the sweep effective. If you're all over the place, you're not going to be able to control their leg properly. Second, it keeps you safe. A good stance helps you stay stable so you don't get countered or fall over yourself.
Okay, so that's a good grasp on the basics. Now, let's switch gears and look at that scientific paper that went deep into the body positioning. What were they trying to figure out?
They basically wanted to find out what the best body angles are at the very start of the throw to make it as powerful as possible. They called it profiling the optimal body pitch angles. In simple terms, it's the angle of your torso compared to the mat. Like, are you straight up, leaning forward, leaning back, that kind of thing.
I see. How do you even research something like that, though?
Yeah.
It's not like you could just ask people what feels right.
They actually took a pretty hands-on approach. They watched videos of advanced foot sweeps. They were from online judo and sambo demos and tutorials. They used slow motion to find that split-second moment when the attacker, Tori, begins the sweep. They called it the throw starting point.
So they paused the action and started measuring angles.
Basically, yeah. They took screenshots at those key points, and then they used software to draw lines representing the body's angle. Then, by making a virtual right triangle, they were able to calculate the body pitch angle. They said their measurements were accurate to within 5 degrees, which is pretty good considering it was from videos.
Clever. They looked at front views, side views, and 45-degree angles, right? What did they find when they were looking at it from the front?
So they found 2 main groups of body pitch angles. The first group was pretty much 0 degrees, standing straight up, no lean. The other group was more varied. The angles were between 16 and 18 degrees of lean.
So even looking at someone straight on, there wasn't one perfect angle.
Exactly. And it got even more interesting when they looked from the side. Again, there were two main groups. One group was leaning back by about 15 degrees, they called that minus, and the other group was leaning forward about 20 degrees, which they called plus.
And they had some ideas about why there were these two different leaning angles.
Yeah, they thought it might be because of how much the attacker is using their own weight. So if someone leans forward a lot, that 20-degree plus group, that means they're putting more of their body weight into the throw. But if they're only slightly leaning back, that 15-degree minus group, they might be using less body weight and more focused on the precise movement of their leg and arms.
Makes sense. Like either you're really committing your whole body to make that initial wobble, or you're being a bit more tactical and relying on the actual technique itself. Did they find similar stuff when they looked at the 45-degree angles?
Yeah, pretty similar. Once again, two groups. This time it was around 10 degrees leaning back and 10 degrees leaning forward. Same idea seemed to apply. Some using more body weight, some focusing more on the force of their movement.
Sounds like the study really showed that there's no one-size-fits-all body position for the Ashi Harai.
For sure. They actually said that there were no strict separation lines between these two groups of throw techniques. So it seems like it really comes down to the specific situation and how the person doing the throw likes to do it.
They did have some advice, though, especially for people who are learning the technique, right?
Yeah, they suggested that while training, people should try and keep their body lean within 30 to 40 degrees. And for beginners, they specifically said it's a good idea to practice with a straight, upright stance, the 0-degree lean.
Why was that? Why do they think standing upright is better for beginners?
Well, they said using your body weight in the throw needs you to be very coordinated. So if you try to add a big lean when you're just starting out, it might be too hard, especially for younger people or those with less experience.
Right. It makes sense to get the basic movement and timing solid first while standing upright. And then as you get better, you can start playing around with using your body weight. It's a good tip for anyone who's learning the technique. Okay, let's move on to the muscle stuff. This is where it gets really cool. What was that study all about?
That study had a very long name, but it basically wanted to figure out which muscles are working the hardest when really skilled female judoka do the throw. They called it the Ashi Harai, which is just a slightly different way of writing it.
Cool. So they're looking at what's happening under the hood, the engine of the throw, especially at an elite level. How'd they do this research?
They used 2D and 3D video analysis. The videos were of 3 members of the Russian national youth judo team. Using both types of video, let them look at the movements in lots of detail and get a full picture of how the muscles were working.
And what did they find out from the 2D video analysis, like about the very start of the throw?
So the 2D analysis suggested that at the very start of the throw, the off-balancing part, you don't actually need to be that strong. It looks like technique and leverage are more important in those first moments.
Oh, interesting. So you don't need to be like super buff to start setting up the Ashi Harai.
Not at the very beginning, it seems. They also talked about the movements involved in the off-balancing. They noticed something called active adduction, which is when you bring your leg in toward the center of your body, and then flexion, which is bending the leg at the hip. It's the right hip if you're doing a right-sided sweep. Think of adduction as bringing your knee toward your other knee.
Got it. What about the foot that's doing the sweeping? What muscles are important there?
So they said it's important to keep that foot really stable during the sweep. You don't want it to bend at the ankle. And the muscles on the front of your lower leg help with that.
So it's not just about swinging your leg. There's a lot of control going on in the sweeping foot, too. What did the 3D video analysis show? Like, what muscles were really changing the most during the throw?
Yeah, so the 3D analysis showed some really important stuff. The muscle that changed length the most when doing a sweep to the right was the musculus adductor longus. That's the long muscle on the inside of your right thigh, and it contracts super fast.
Makes sense. Your inner thigh muscles are really important for bringing your leg across to sweep the other person's leg.
Yeah.
It knocks them off balance.
Yeah, totally. And they also saw a big change in the length of the right musculus sartorius. That one's a long, thin muscle that runs diagonally down your thigh, and it also contracted pretty quickly.
So both those inner thigh muscles and that longer one on the front are working hard. What about the core muscles? They must be important for balance and power, right?
Oh, absolutely. The study showed that the left and right musculus rectus abdominis, your abs, and the musculus obliquus externus abdominis, the obliques on the sides of your torso, were really active too. They explained that your obliques work in opposite directions to help you twist and bend your torso, which is what you need to do to tip the other person over. And then the rectus abdominis helps you bend forward later in the throw.
It's not just your legs then. Your core is really involved in the whole movement. They talked about how fast the obliques contract and stretch too. What did they find there?
They said those obliques were contracting and stretching at super high speeds. It really highlights just how important they are for the throw. Those quick movements probably help make the off-balancing and the fall happen so fast.
Wow, this is really detailed. Were there any surprises? Like any muscles involved that you wouldn't really think about for a foot sweep?
Yeah, there were some interesting findings with the upper body. They saw changes in the length of part of the triceps brachii, that's the muscle on the back of your upper arm, and in a section of the trapezius muscle that's on your upper back on the right side. And they saw in the left and right latissimus dorsi, the big muscles on the sides of your back, the lats.
Your upper body, that's so cool. How does your upper body help with a foot sweep?
They specifically talked about the lower fibers of the latissimus dorsi on both sides. They said those are actually important muscles that they hadn't even noticed in the 2D analysis. It really shows how useful the 3D view was. They concluded that the movements of your upper limbs, bringing your arms in towards your body and extending your shoulders, help a lot with off-balancing your opponent. It just shows how your whole body has to work together.
So even though it's a foot sweep, how you're using your arms and upper back affects how well your leg works. Super interesting. Okay, to wrap up all this muscle stuff, what are the main things to remember?
The study concluded that the most important movements for an effective Ashi Harai are bringing your leg in and bending it. That's on the same side as the sweep. And when you're doing a sweep to the right, the muscles that work the hardest are the right long adductor, the right sartorius, your abdominal obliques, and the lower fibers of both your latissimus dorsi muscles.
Wow. That's a lot more to it than just sweeping their foot away. It shows how much of your body is actually involved when you do a high-level Ashi Harai.
Definitely. It shows how efficient and coordinated the movements are in elite-level judo. Every single part of your body plays a role in making the throw happen.
Okay, so let's put it all together for you listeners. Ashi Harai, although it might seem like a simple foot sweep, is actually a really precise sequence of movements. You have the off-balancing, the entry, and the sweep itself. There are also different ways to position your body at the start. Even really skilled judoka might use slightly different angles depending on their game plan and how they like to use their body weight. For beginners, it's usually best to start with a straight, upright stance. That's how you build the basic coordination. And then, if we look at the muscles that are working, it's not just about your legs. To do it properly, you need specific muscles in your legs, your core, and even your upper body, all working together to make your opponent lose their balance so you can complete the throw.
That brings us to something for you to think about. We've talked about different body leans and all the muscles that are involved. So how might someone's individual physical strengths, maybe they have strong core muscles or really powerful legs, or how they prefer to fight, how might those things influence which way they do the Ashi Harai and which way they find the most success with? It's like a puzzle, you know? It's about the technical details, your body type, and your own fighting style all coming together.
It's definitely more than meets the eye. So next time you see the Ashi Harai, you'll know there's a whole lot more going on than just a simple foot sweep. Thanks for tuning in to the Deep Dive.
Next time on the Judo Science Podcast, Episode 5, Faster Legs, More Momentum, How Skilled Judokas Master the Uchimata.